What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you've been a subscriber for at least 5-6 months, you know I love my true crime. I listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos. So I thought we would listen to a case that I've never heard of. It's called The Haunting Case of the Rackman. R-A-C-K. The Rackman. The Haunting Case of the Rackman. I'm ready. Let's do it.
A skipper spent a seemingly normal day sailing along an Australian river in order to catch some fish to sell at market, only instead of his usual collection of prawns and squid, he made a rather macabre catch: a human body tied to a steel crucifix. To this day, this baffling case remains unresolved.
A body tied to a steel crucifix? So right away, whoever did this, it was personal. This wasn't just like a robbery and then they killed him and dumped him into the ocean. Whoever did this knew the victim, and the victim probably knew the killer. And it's still unsolved to this day.
On the 11th of August 1994, a skipper named Mark Peterson was sailing along the Hawkesbury River in Sydney, Australia, whilst aboard his trawler, the Lady Marian. At approximately 11:40 a.m, whilst the boat was sitting on the water near to Flint and Steel Beach, Mark decided that this would be the perfect...
This is how I used to dress 6 months ago, and this is me now, and it's all thanks to my
spot to start fishing. This was until he felt a strong tug on his line. Initially, Mark thought he had caught giant squid or something similar, but this turned out not to be the case. Mark actually reeled in a heavy steel frame from the water, measuring approximately 182 centimetres in length, onto the deck of the Lady Marian. The steel crucifix had two cylindrical solid metal bars, which were welded to it with another across the middle, bent into a sort of L shape. It was at this point that Mark looked a little bit closer at the steel frame, and he made a rather chilling discovery. He saw what appeared to be a bone sticking out of some plastic bags which were attached to the steel rack, and initially he believed them to be animal bones. However, it was later confirmed that these bones belonged to a human. The deceased male was attached to...
Let me ask you guys something. If you've seen bones anywhere, you've been in the woods, could you separate them from human bones, animal bones? Could you be like, that's a femur from a human being? Because I'm pretty sure I could. I hear so many of these cases when someone finds like a bag and has bones in it like this, or they're walking, they find bones and at first thought it was human bones, and I looked closer. I would be able to, like, right away. That's...
To the handmade rusty steel cross, the torso of the individual actually being restricted by the L-shaped bar. John Doe's body had been wrapped in these plastic bags and bound to the crucifix using orange rope and a number of different wires, a non-slip rope noose and some wire also around the desk.
See, I can understand tying, because I've heard so many stuff about, some of the stories about, tying like something like cement or something so the bones could never be found and they'll sink to the bottom of the lake or the river or the ocean, whatever like that. But making like a steel crucifix that's what I'm guessing the murderer did. That's why he or she, most likely he, wanted to attach the bag of bones. I don't know if they were bones at the time, so that it would sink. But there's a reason behind a steel crucifix. I've never heard that one before. And I've been a true crime fan since I was like my early 20s. I'm 44 now, so let's just say 20 years. I've never heard of something like this. Yeah.
Neck. Mark Peterson, the fisherman who had made John Doe's body, had been wrapped in these plastic bags and bound to the crucifix using orange rope and a number of different wires, a non-slip rope noose and some wire also around the decedent's neck. Mark Peterson, the fisherman who had made this grisly discovery, immediately contacted the Broken Bay Water Police, who arrived promptly on the scene to investigate. When the body was examined by a pathologist, it was found that the male individual was still fully clothed, and he also still had some hair and soft tissue attached to his remains. The medical examiner determined that the unidentified male, who was nicknamed the Rack Man by Australian authorities, was a male of Caucasian descent, possibly of Mediterranean or Central European, more specifically Austria and possibly Italy. The man was estimated to be between the ages of 21 and 46 years of age and stood at a rather small stature at approximately 5'3" inches tall. The Rack Man was found to be wearing a medium-sized polo shirt with the words "Everything Australian" written across it, a large pair of No Sweat branded jogging trousers and a pair of blue and white medium Sparrow branded underwear. Unfortunately, these items of clothing were local to Australia and were extremely popular.
Are you an introvert who is shy and or nervous in the presence of women with a deep fear that you will be rejected by them?
At the time, so for authorities to trace down who purchased these items and where would have been impossible. The male individual also had a pink lighter and a packet of Benson and Hedges cigarettes in his possession when he was discovered, both of which were in his left trouser pocket. John Doe's teeth were straight, and he appeared to have had no fillings in the past, although he did have a lower right molar which had been removed, most likely in his youth.
See, when there's like a John Doe or a Jane Doe, it's kind of hard to solve. a murder. So you're hoping that someone comes forward, just not because of this case, but just reporting like their son or their daughter missing. So you gotta get as much info out there. They said what shirt he was wearing, underwear he was wearing. Yeah. In order to solve a murder, you have to know who the victim is. So, gotta try to get as much info out there as possible.
Other than this, authorities didn't have much to go on. Due to the fact that the body had been underwater for such a prolonged period of time, estimated to be between 12 months and 3 years, the man's fingerprints could not be used to identify him, as by this time they had completely washed away. Also, DNA was
12 months to 3 years? So yeah, you need to go to your files and see if anyone reported someone missing during that time period. I hope by the end of this video they have at least found out who the victim is or was. 12 months to 3 years. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that one. I thought it was something
extracted from the victim. However, the profile they created was far too weak to make any sort of identification. Authorities had seemingly hit a dead end here. Authorities were able to determine how long the Rachman had been on the riverbed for through something called barnacle analysis. They took 2 of these barnacles and sent them to the lab, where they were then put into petri dishes with their growth rates closely monitored. It was through this analysis that authorities managed to estimate the man had been underwater for between 12 months and 3 years.
You're solving cases back from like the 40s and the 30s. Seriously. Because they held on to like, I mean, even though like the killer is long dead, but they're able to check, using DNA, which keeps, advancing. They're able to solve these murders that happened like almost 100 years ago. Can't believe I said it almost 100 years ago. 2024. When I say like 100 years ago, I still feel like it's talking about like the early 1900s, the late 1800s. Like I'm in my 20s, early 20s, late teens. 100 years ago was 1924. Anyways, yeah, and people who have spent like 40 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit, like a murder they didn't commit, or a rape, they're being released because DNA, proves that it wasn't them. Can you imagine spending all that time in prison for a crime you didn't commit?
A number of individuals, including a drug dealer, a businessman, and a rent-a-kill hitman, were considered by authorities as potentially being the identity of the so-called Rachman. However, through DNA comparisons to family members of these individuals, They were all ruled out as being the unidentified man. For over 20 years, the Rachman's body remained at the morgue, unidentified. After reaching a number of dead ends in the case, authorities decided to release new facial reconstructions of John Doe in the hopes that someone who saw these images would recognise him. However, their efforts were fruitless and no significant leads came from these new facial reconstructions. The Rachman case
looks
had
like Liam
seemingly
Neeson.
gone cold, and as the years progressed, no new leads were established. That was until 24 years later. On the 29th of August 2018, the New South Wales coroner revealed to the public that there had been a significant breakthrough in the Rachman case, and through advanced DNA technology, they were able to identify the man as 37-year-old Max Tunzevsky.
These
No
ads.
living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
Yeah, what about homeless people?
Good.
Dog commercial.
Max was from the western Sydney suburb of Newtown and had last been seen alive by his live-in girlfriend on the 11th of January 1993, leaving their home in Sydney and travelling towards the Gold Coast. Max was known to be a heavy gambler and tended to travel to the Gold Coast to fulfill his gambling addiction, visiting a number of casinos during these trips. Before leaving on the 11th of January, Max had taken out approximately 18,000 Australian dollars, which wasn't particularly unusual as he would normally take large sums of money with him when he went on these gambling excursions. Max never returned home that day, but alarm bells didn't start ringing with his girlfriend at the time because normally when he went on these trips, he would be away for a few days before he came back home.
So when he left, he had a lot of money with him already. But he,
casinos during these trips. Before leaving on the 11th of January, Max had taken out approximately 18,000 Australian dollars, which wasn't particularly unusual as he would normally take large sums of money with him when he went on these gambling excursions. Max never returned home that day, but alarm bells didn't start ringing with his girlfriend at the time because normally when he went on these trips, he would be away for a few days before he came back home. So he wasn't reported missing until a couple of days later. She contacted authorities to report her boyfriend as a missing person, but unfortunately Max never came home again. He was known to have debts in regards to his gambling addiction, although an approximate amount and the number of people he owed money to is unknown. This seems like a rather plausible theory as to why Max ended up being murdered. Perhaps he owed someone a lot of money and he couldn't pay it back, and as a result of this, he was killed. But his family and friends were certain that Max had no connections to the criminal underworld. Although even if he did, it would have been highly unlikely that his family or friends would have known about this. The fact that
no one knows anyone 100%. No one knows anyone 100%. I heard that like a while back. You may think you know someone 100%. No one knows anyone 100%. There's always something. You can't read people's minds. Sadly, people who commit suicide. There's like family and friends who said there was no signs. We didn't see it coming. You didn't know that person 100%. If you did, you could have possibly helped them. Anyways, I think this was something to do with. This is in Australia. Every casino has some type of criminal activity. Whoever did this tied him, put him on a cross, steel type thing. It was someone who, make sure he disappears, if you know what I mean. And he was gone for 3 years. I think the girlfriend said he left 3 years ago. So 3 years staying underground or underwater. It worked. Not forever.
Was tied to the steel crucifix appeared to indicate gang-related violence rather than being some sort of random attack. The way he was tied to the crucifix was almost symbolic in a way, and perhaps was meant to be sent as some sort of warning.
Before I don't know if they said cause of death. It wouldn't shock me at all if they threw him over a bridge while he was still alive. They put him on this steel cross-like thing. It's not like an actual cross. I mean, it is, but it's got like 4 things going. It's basically like a 4-headed cross. He has hands tied behind his back, steel cross. I bet you they threw him over while he was still alive. It wouldn't surprise me.
So that people wouldn't get on the wrong side of this gang or organisation again. If this was the case, however, why did they feel the need to hide Max's remains in the river? Surely if they wanted to send a
It's like the
What if you could fill your summer with unforgettable memories?
message, they wouldn't have hidden his body underwater and would have made more of an effort for Max's body to be seen or found in a public setting. Though water deaths are notably notoriously difficult
3
to solve
years
due to the fact it washes away much, if not all, forensic evidence. With that being said, however, the Hawkesbury River itself is a very active place day to day, often filled with trawlers, fishing boats and the like. Perhaps the person or persons responsible intended for Max to be found sooner and identified, but this simply didn't happen. Something else which is extremely odd in regards to this case is the fact that the metal crucifix was made to match Max's exact measurements. This would have taken a lot of skill from an individual who had experience in either welding or metalwork, and it would have been very difficult to put it all together.
He looked like a short guy.
This, of course, is a very disturbing detail, but it could be more significant in future
5'9",
investigations
5'10".
into this perplexing case. Max Tomaszewski's full autopsy report has never been released to the public, so the specific details surrounding his death still remain a mystery.
Should have paid your debts.
It is unclear whether Max suffered any injuries prior to his demise, whether he was tortured, for example, or if he ingested some sort of poison prior to his death. And it's not known whether he actually passed away whilst on the crucifix, or whether he died prior and was just attached to it in an effort to dispose of his body.
He was still alive.
Some sources do claim, however, that Max succumbed to blunt force trauma. It is also speculated that due to the very heavy nature of the metal rack, that more than one person was involved in regards to Max's death, and his subsequent disposal in the Hawkesbury River. With that being said, however, Max's killer or killers have never been caught.
And they never will.
The Rackman case has baffled Australian authorities for over 30 years, and despite being positively identified as Max Tansevsky, many questions still remain in regards to his demise. The case has been referred to the Unsolved Homicide Unit of the New South Wales Police Department in an effort to find out exactly what happened to the 37-year-old on the day he died. Detectives are meticulously searching through Max's known associates, his criminal history, and are even trying to establish where parts of the missing map came from in order to put the final piece of the puzzle together in order to bring Max's killers to justice. If you have any information regarding the
No, we don't. It's in Australia. We got unsolved murders here that we don't know. But yeah, you gotta do your due diligence. And talk to the girlfriend. But I'm almost positive this is something to do with him not paying his debts and criminal underworld. I swear, in every casino, there's like not as much as like 50s, 60s, and the 70s, whereas like the casinos were like owned by the mafia. It's like nowadays, like in Vegas, for example, everything's pretty good. The government has done a good job. Let's just say it's safer as far as it's not run by the mafia. But there's still a lot of casinos. This was years ago. I forget when did they. Was it the 80s or the 90s? Maybe in the 70s. I forget what year. Yeah, to me this has something to do with him not paying his debts, and there's some criminal activity as far as like mobsters, the mafia. This has the telltale signs of being tied behind something, throw them over the bridge, throw them off the bridge, toss them in the air, kick them into the height. That has something to do with not paying his debts to the underground bad people that you don't ever with. Don't mess with the mafia. Don't mess with mobsters. You don't do it. Do not do it. Anyways, that was intriguing. Let me know. I thought about doing a poll, but let me know in the comments if you want to. This is basically your channel. I do all this for you guys. I like to review stuff. I wish I could understand how to use OBS Studio. I've tried so hard. I'm an idiot when it comes to anything computer, electronic wise. Reaction videos. They have so many subscribers because they get to react with the stuff on the screen. The subscribers do. If I had the stuff on the screen, I would be so much better because we can see it and watch it all together. Instead, you gotta hear me ramble on and on and on. Do you love me? Because I almost said it. I almost said the L word. I'm not ready to yet. I'm not ready. I'm close, but I'm not ready to say it. The L word. Anyways, I'm gonna get going. Like always and forever. Take care. Be safe. Peace. Pay your gambling debts. If you have a bookie or something.